She slammed the fridge door so hard the jars inside rattled, and for a second I thought the whole thing would tip forward. That sharp, echoing crack wasn't even the worst part. It was Dana's voice that followed, low and cutting. "So you really locked your food away like some paranoid freak?" Her words hit harder than the sound. I was standing by the counter peeling back the lid of my soup, pretending the heat rising from it could hide the way my chest tightened. Around us, forks paused mid-air. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered something under their breath. Nobody stepped in. I kept my eyes on the bowl. "My lunches kept getting stolen," I said. "This was all I had left to do." Dana crossed her arms. "Normal people don't lock up food. We're a team. You're making everything weird." Weird. That word slid under my ribs in a way it shouldn't have. I'd put up with the missing meals, the ignored messages, the fake sympathy nobody meant. But this, being treated like I was the problem, it scraped something raw inside me. At the far table, Adam muttered, "Careful. He might put your sandwich behind a lock next." Soft laughter followed, quick and mean, the kind meant to look harmless in case I reacted. I swallowed the burn in my throat, the one that never showed on my face. "I just wanted to eat my lunch in peace," I said quietly. Dana smirked as if I'd proven her point. And in that tiny kitchen, surrounded by people who'd rather laugh than tell the truth, something inside me slipped, not broken, but bending toward a line I didn't know I had. The microwave hummed behind me, a low, droning sound that filled the gaps where kindness should have been. I kept my back turned, pretending to read the heating instructions on the bowl even though I'd memorized them weeks ago. Anything to avoid their eyes, anything to keep my voice steady. A chair scraped across the floor, sharp, deliberate. "You know," Adam said, leaning back with his soda can dangling from 2 fingers, "if someone kept stealing my lunch, I'd just bring something cheap, not whatever gourmet stuff you pack. Cheap." The word landed like an elbow to the ribs. "I cook because it calms me," I murmured, "and because it's cheaper than eating out every day." Dana huffed. "Yeah, well, maybe if you didn't act so dramatic about it, whoever took it would have stopped." She brushed invisible crumbs off her blouse, loud enough for me to hear. "People don't like being called thieves." I blinked. "I never called anyone a thief. You implied it." She tossed the words like scraps onto the floor. A tight silence followed, the kind that hides judgment behind lowered gazes and half-finished lunches. Someone opened a soda too quickly, and it fizzed over, dripping onto the table. No one laughed. No one helped. It was just another tiny mess in a room full of bigger ones. I stepped away from the counter, soup warm in my hands, but my chest felt colder than the tile under my shoes. I passed the communal fridge, the same dull metal door I used to trust, and heard Dana mutter to the others, "He's making the whole office uncomfortable." Their soft, agreeing noises trailed behind me as I walked out. Funny how people can ignore you for weeks, then suddenly care so much about your choices. The hallway outside the kitchen was quieter, but the quiet didn't feel peaceful. It felt watchful, like every closed office door held someone who'd already picked a side. I walked toward my desk, soup trembling just enough for me to notice, not enough for anyone else to care. When I sat down, the hum of my mini fridge filled the small space beneath my desk, a soft, steady reminder that I had done the only thing I could. I opened my lunch slowly, breathing in the familiar scent of garlic and broth. It should have comforted me. Instead, it reminded me of the mornings I'd spent cooking, packing, hoping that day would be different. A shadow crossed my desk. I looked up. It was Mark, the one person I used to think was decent. He didn't sit. He just stood there, shifting from foot to foot. "Hey," he said, voice low. "People are talking. They think you're overreacting." I let out a breath. 5 lunches, Mark, 5. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look surprised. "They just think," he continued carefully, that putting a fridge under your desk makes you look, I don't know, paranoid. His choice of word wasn't accidental. They all seemed to like that one. Would you let someone steal from you over and over? I asked. He scratched his cheek, eyes avoiding mine. I mean, it's just food. Just food. Just my time. Just my money. Just my day thrown off because somebody else couldn't respect a boundary. Besides, Mark added, lowering his voice so no one down the aisle could hear, Dana says it makes the team look bad, having someone act so defensive. There it was, the quiet confession beneath all the teasing. It wasn't about the fridge. It wasn't about my lunch. It was about how my refusal to be stepped on made them uncomfortable. I didn't say a word. I just let him walk away, his shoulders hunched like he expected my disappointment to follow him down the hall. It didn't. I saved my disappointment for the whole office instead. The next morning, I walked into the office a few minutes earlier than usual. I thought the silence might help settle my nerves, but instead, it felt thick, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. I placed my bag down, opened my laptop, and bent to check the mini fridge, making sure the lock was still tight. A sharp voice cut through the quiet. So this is the famous fridge. I straightened. Dana stood there beside my desk, arms crossed, eyes narrowed with that same amused disdain she wore yesterday. She nudged the fridge lightly with the tip of her heel. Cute, she said. Very territorial. My jaw tightened. Can I help you with something? She leaned closer, lowering her voice to a tone meant only for me. You're making everyone uncomfortable. People don't like working with someone who acts like the world is out to get him. A soft thud sounded as she tapped the lock with her finger. If you spent half this energy just fitting in, none of this would be happening. I felt the heat rise in my chest. Someone stole my food, Dana, 5 times. She rolled her eyes. And maybe you should have just brought something you weren't so attached to. You don't see the rest of us panicking. Before I could answer, footsteps approached. It was our manager, Claire, usually calm, usually kind. She paused when she saw Dana standing over me. What's going on? Claire asked. Dana gestured toward the fridge. We're just talking about this situation. It's getting a little out of hand. Claire looked at me. Is everything okay? I opened my mouth to respond, but Dana cut in quickly. He's bringing division into the team, she said smoothly. Everyone's talking about it. It's creating tension. Claire's eyes shifted back to me. For the first time since this started, I felt something crack. Not anger, not shame, but a quiet, tired disbelief. They weren't just teasing anymore. They were building a case. Claire didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, eyes flicking between Dana's arms-crossed confidence and my still-seated quiet. The worst part wasn't the silence. It was the way I could feel the office listening, even though no one was looking directly at us. Keys stopped typing. A chair stopped rolling. Every sound paused, waiting. Finally, Claire exhaled. Let's step into the conference room. Of course, Dana followed. She walked ahead of me like she was escorting someone into an interrogation. Inside, Claire shut the door gently, but the latch clicked louder than any slam. I took a seat. Dana didn't. She stood behind the chair opposite me, hands on the backrest like she was claiming territory. Claire sat down, folded her hands, and looked at me with tired eyes. I've heard some concerns. Dana nodded as if confirming a report she filed herself. Concerns about what? I asked. Dana gave a soft laugh. Oh, come on, the fridge, the attitude, the tension. People feel like you're accusing the whole team. I never accused anyone, I said. But you implied it, Dana snapped. You sent messages in the group chat like some detective. I asked people to stop taking my food. She scoffed. Same thing. Claire held up a hand. Enough. Then she turned to me. Look, I know this isn't ideal, but you have to understand. Locking up food under your desk is unusual. Unusual. Another word they liked. And it's making the environment uncomfortable, Claire continued gently, even if that's not your intention. So, Dana cut in, we're hoping you'll just get rid of the fridge thing. Go back to using the communal kitchen like everyone else. My throat tightened. So someone steals from me and I'm the one who has to change? Dana tilted her head. Well, we can't force the whole office to adjust just because you're sensitive about lunch. That was it. Not the theft, not the dismissal, not even the insult. It was the casual certainty, the way she said sensitive like it was a flaw carved into my skin. Claire's expression shifted, just slightly, when Dana said the word sensitive. A flicker across her face, like she knew the line had been crossed but didn't want to deal with the fallout of acknowledging it. I sat there, fingers pressed lightly against my knee, holding myself still. If I moved, I wasn't sure whether it would be to stand or to break. I just want to eat my lunch without it disappearing, I said quietly. Dana rolled her eyes so sharply it was almost theatrical. And we want a normal office environment, not this. She gestured vaguely toward me, toward the hallway, toward the invisible web of tension she'd stitched, and then blamed me for. Claire leaned back. Maybe there's a middle ground. There isn't, Dana cut in. We can't work like this. People are uncomfortable. People. Always people. Never a name. Never ownership. Just a cloud of anonymous judgment meant to corner me into silence. I took a slow breath. Has anyone actually complained to you? Dana answered before Claire could open her mouth. Everyone complains. They just don't want to say it to his face. Claire didn't confirm it. She didn't deny it. She just looked tired. That was when something in me cooled, not hardened, cooled, like ice forming over water, sealing the surface. I straightened in my chair. So someone steals from me, ignores me, mocks me, and now I'm the problem because I won't make it easy for them anymore? Dana let out a short, sharp laugh. God, you're dramatic. Her voice wasn't loud, but it sliced straight through me. Claire lifted a hand again, rubbing her temple. We're not accusing you of anything. We're just asking you to consider the team dynamic. Team dynamic. A phrase people use when they're too afraid to address the real issue. I stood up slowly, chair legs scraping against the carpet. If protecting my own lunch is ruining the office, then maybe the office has bigger problems than my fridge. Neither of them said a word. They didn't have to. Their silence told me everything. When I walked back to my desk, the office had shifted. Not visibly, nobody stared outright, but I felt the change like a pressure drop before a storm. Every keyboard seemed quieter, every whisper softer. The mini fridge hummed, steady and small, the only thing in the room that didn't judge me. I sat down, placing my hands on the desk to steady myself. A message pinged on my monitor, from Adam. Heard you had a meeting, dude. Just let the fridge thing go. It's not that deep. Not that deep. 5 meals stolen, 30 mornings spent cooking, 10 polite messages ignored, and now I was expected to pretend none of it mattered. I clicked the message closed without replying. A soft knock sounded on the edge of my desk. It was Ruth, one of the quieter co-workers, someone who never joined in the teasing, but never stopped it either. Her brown paper lunch bag hung from her hand. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just looked tired. I just wanted to say, she murmured, eyes flicking around as if checking for witnesses. I get why you did it. I do. But people here don't like waves. I stared at her. Someone steals from me and I'm the wave? She winced. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm saying it's how they think. How you think? I asked quietly. She hesitated. Then, almost too soft to hear, she whispered, I didn't take your lunches. I believed her. But the fact that she felt the need to clarify carved a smaller, sharper hurt inside me. She stepped back. Just be careful. They're worked up. Worked up. Over a man who finally drew a boundary. As she walked away, her lunch bag crinkling in her hand, one uninvited thought settled into my chest. They hadn't treated me like an equal in weeks. I just hadn't noticed how far the distance had grown. By Thursday, the tension became something you could feel before you even stepped inside the building. I walked through the lobby, past the security desk, past the framed motivational posters, but none of it softened the weight sitting on my shoulders. When I reached my desk, two coworkers who normally chatted loudly fell silent mid-sentence. One of them gave a tight smile. The other didn't bother pretending. I placed my lunchbox beside the mini fridge. The click of the lock sliding open sounded louder than it should have. A few heads turned. Not obviously, just enough to say, "There he goes again." I heated my food and carried it back through the hallway. The smell of garlic rice followed me, a smell that used to make people ask, "What'd you bring today?" But now it only invited low whispers that stopped when I got too close. Halfway to my desk, I heard Dana's voice drifting from the break room. I mean, if he wanted attention, he could have just asked for it. A round of soft laughs. Someone added, "He's committed, though. That fridge is basically his emotional support appliance." More laughter, muffled, but sharp enough to pierce. I kept walking. When I sat down, my hands shook just slightly as I picked up my fork. Not from anger, from something duller, heavier, a kind of tired humiliation that settles under the skin. A message pinged from Claire. "Let's touch base later today." No smiley, no warmth, just those 5 words. My stomach knotted, not because I was afraid of the meeting, but because I already knew the script. They weren't trying to solve the problem. They were trying to solve me. I set my fork down, the metal tapping softly against the plastic container, and in that quiet, a truth I'd avoided finally surfaced. I wasn't dealing with one lunch thief. I was dealing with an office that preferred a scapegoat over a solution. The conference room felt colder in the afternoon light. I stepped inside, and Claire was already there, scrolling something on her tablet. She didn't look up right away. That small delay, that quiet dismissal, made something tighten behind my ribs. When she finally met my eyes, her expression was the same careful neutrality people use when they've already chosen a side. "Thanks for coming," she said. I sat. "What's this about?" She folded her hands. "I've been observing the atmosphere this week. There's tension, discomfort. People feel divided. People. Always faceless. Always convenient. And," she continued, "the fridge situation seems to be contributing to that division." I inhaled slowly. "I brought it because my food was being stolen." "I understand," she said gently, but her tone had an edge, the kind used to soften blows without really cushioning them. But perception matters, and right now, people see the fridge as confrontational. I stared at her. A locked box under my desk is confrontational? It suggests distrust. My jaw tightened. Should I trust the same people who stole from me? A flicker of discomfort crossed her face. "We don't know who did that. But we know it wasn't me," I said. "Yet I'm the only one being scrutinized." Silence. She tapped her tablet, once, twice, before speaking again. "I'm asking you to consider removing the fridge for the sake of workplace harmony." Harmony. The kind built on swallowing every bruise quietly. I leaned back, the chair creaking softly. "You're asking me to make myself easy to take advantage of." "I'm asking you," she said carefully, "to adapt." Adapt. Code for make yourself smaller. I felt something inside me, not anger, not sadness, but a kind of clarity, a cold, steady understanding of exactly where I stood. "I won't remove it," I said. Claire's lips tightened. Not surprise, not disappointment, resignation, as if she'd expected nothing else and already knew what that meant for me. When I stepped out of the conference room, the office lights felt harsher than before. The overhead glare washed the color out of everything. The desks, the walls, the faces that quickly looked away when I walked past. My footsteps sounded too loud on the carpet, each one a reminder that whatever line had existed between me and the rest of them had now solidified into a wall. I reached my desk and sat down slowly. The mini fridge hummed beneath me, steady, loyal, uncomplicated. I placed a hand on its top, feeling the faint vibration beneath my palm. It was absurd, maybe, to feel comforted by an appliance, but in a room full of people who'd made me the villain for wanting basic respect, this little machine was the only thing that had never betrayed me. A chat notification popped up. Dana, of course. Let's all try to move past today. No hard feelings, duh. The smiley at the end made my stomach turn. The kind of smile meant to look harmless, but sharp enough to draw blood if you weren't careful. I didn't reply. Instead, I glanced toward the hallway and caught sight of Ruth again. She stood near the printer, watching me with an expression that wasn't pity, wasn't concern. Something more complicated. Her eyes flicked to the fridge, then to me. Then she looked away quickly, as if even acknowledging the situation made her vulnerable to the office's quiet cruelty. A chair squeaked behind me. Adam walked by, tapping the top of my fridge twice with his knuckles like it was some kind of joke. "Guard it well, man," he muttered. "Wouldn't want it running off." He didn't wait for a reaction. Nobody did anymore. As the hum of the office grew around me again, one truth settled clearer than anything Claire had said. They didn't want harmony. They wanted compliance. And I was done being the easy one. Friday came with a strange stillness, the kind that settles over an office before something breaks. People moved around me as if I were a piece of furniture they'd learned to avoid bumping into. No greetings, no small talk, just sidelong glances that slid away the second I looked up. Around noon, I walked to the break room to heat my food. The moment I stepped inside, the air shifted. Dana stood by the sink with two others. Their conversation died instantly, replaced by a silence sharp enough to slice through skin. I placed my container in the microwave, pressed the buttons, listened to the soft whir. The seconds felt longer than they should. Behind me, chairs scraped quietly, not leaving, repositioning. I heard Dana whisper, not bothering to lower her voice enough. "See? He's still doing the whole fridge thing." One of the others snickered. "Commitment, I'll give him that." My fingers curled around the edge of the counter, not from anger, from restraint. The microwave beeped. I opened it and pulled my container out, only to hear Dana say, almost lazily, "Imagine being that scared of a sandwich." Something inside me paused. Not snapped, paused, like a heartbeat waiting for the next beat that never came. I turned, slow and steady. "Someone stole my food 5 times. That's not a sandwich. That's a pattern." Dana shrugged. "Maybe take a joke?" "It's not a joke to steal from people," I said. She crossed her arms. "Wow. Sensitive." The word echoed off the tile. I didn't say another thing. I just walked out, soup steaming in my hands, dignity held tighter than the container. As I stepped into the hallway, I realized something. They weren't trying to make me feel included. They were trying to make me feel small enough to stop fighting back. And the longer this went on, the clearer it became. I wasn't the only one they'd done this to. I was just the first to push back. I had barely sat down at my desk when a faint rustling sound made me look up. Ruth stood a few feet away, clutching her lunch bag to her chest, like she wasn't sure whether to approach or retreat. When our eyes met, she hesitated, then stepped closer. "Can I talk to you for a second?" she whispered. Her voice carried something different this time. Not fear, not discomfort, guilt. I nodded, and she pulled a chair beside mine. She didn't sit all the way, just perched on the edge, hands twisted together. "I should have said something sooner," she began. "I didn't want to get dragged into everything. But I heard something this morning." My chest tightened. "What?" She swallowed. It wasn't random. The lunches, the missing food. She looked down. Someone bragged about it. The office noise faded around us. Who? I asked quietly. Ruth hesitated, and that hesitation told me the answer before she said it. Dana, she whispered. She was laughing about it. Said you were easy to mess with. Said you react exactly how she expected. I sat back, breath leaving me in a slow exhale. The room dimmed at the edges, not from shock, from recognition. The pieces had been there all along. The teasing, the sudden involvement, the mocking comments, the pressure to remove the fridge. Ruth kept talking, voice shaking. She told someone she took your meals because she didn't like the smell of your lunches and wanted to teach you not to bring strong food. My jaw clenched, hard. And, Ruth added softly, she said if you made a fuss, she'd just push it back on you, like she's been doing. A cold stillness settled over me. Not rage, not panic. Clarity. Pure, undeniable clarity. Ruth reached out, barely touching my arm. I'm sorry. I should have come sooner. I just didn't want to be the next target. I nodded. You're not the only one she counted on staying quiet. As she walked away, her shoulders hunched with the weight of a truth she'd finally released, I felt the shift inside me. Quiet, decisive, immovable. This wasn't about a fridge anymore. This was about what I refused to let continue. I didn't go to Claire right away. I didn't storm into the conference room or demand an investigation. That wasn't the kind of power this office respected. They didn't listen to loud, they listened to undeniable. So I waited. At 3:17 p.m., the perfect moment arrived. A team meeting. Everyone gathered in the open area near the whiteboard. Claire stood at the front reviewing deadlines. Dana hovered near the middle, arms folded, confidence radiating off her like static. I joined the circle quietly, hands in my pockets, the mini fridge humming faintly from my desk behind me. Claire finished her notes. Any concerns before we wrap up? Silence. Then I stepped forward. I have one. Heads turned. Dana stiffened. Claire blinked, surprised. No one expected me to speak. Not here, not now, not in front of everyone. I kept my voice even. The lunches that were stolen, I know who took them. A ripple moved through the room. Dana let out a sharp laugh. Oh, here we go. It was you, I said calmly. The room froze. Her smile faltered. Excuse me? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step toward her. I simply repeated, you stole my lunches, 5 times, then mocked me for reacting. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone exhaled too loudly. Dana scoffed, louder than necessary. You have 0 proof. I nodded once. Actually, I do. Every eye locked on me. I have a witness who heard you brag about it this morning, I said, turning toward Claire. Someone who heard you say I was easy to mess with, and that you planned to push the blame back on me. Dana's face drained of color. Claire's expression changed, slowly, unmistakably. Not anger, not shock, recognition. Because deep down, she'd known it was possible. She'd just hoped it wasn't true. Dana sputtered. Who said that? Who's lying about me? But no one answered. No one defended her. No one laughed this time. The silence was the loudest thing she'd ever heard. Claire's posture shifted first, a small straighten of the spine, a tightening around the eyes. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was watching Dana with the kind of quiet scrutiny managers only use when they realize a problem is much worse than they thought. Dana opened her mouth again, desperate now. This is ridiculous. Who even said that? Who's lying about me? No one spoke. Not Adam, not the co-workers who laughed with her, not the ones who echoed her comments, not even the ones who stayed silent while she picked me apart. Silence isn't always neutral. Sometimes it's evidence. I kept my voice steady. If Claire wants names, I'll share them privately. But the issue isn't who told me. It's what you did. Dana's jaw clenched. You're just trying to make me look bad." "You did that yourself," I said. A few people shifted, not toward her, away. That tiny movement felt like a crack forming in the stone. Claire finally spoke. Her tone was controlled, but the softness was gone. "Dana, I think we should step into my office." Dana barked a laugh, brittle, sharp. "Oh, suddenly I'm the problem. He's the one with the fridge under his desk." "That fridge," I said quietly, "only exists because you kept taking what wasn't yours." Claire raised a hand. "Enough. Dana, now." For the first time since this started, Dana didn't have a comeback. Her face twisted. Anger, embarrassment, disbelief. Then she spun on her heel and walked toward the hallway, steps fast and uneven. Claire followed her, but not before giving me a single look. Not warm, not cold. Just acknowledging. The kind of look people give when they realize they backed the wrong person. The room stayed still for several seconds after the door clicked shut. Then someone exhaled softly and murmured, "Damn." And just like that, the spell broke. The office didn't return to normal after Claire and Dana disappeared down the hallway. It didn't even pretend to. People drifted back to their desks, but the usual murmur of conversation never recovered. Chairs moved softly, keyboards clicked unevenly, and every so often someone would glance toward Claire's office like they expected shouting to break through the glass. I walked back to my desk slowly, the kind of slow you do when your body is trying to catch up to what your mind already knows. Something had shifted, irreversibly. When I sat down, the mini fridge hummed beneath me, steady, unbothered, almost grounding. I rested my hand on it for a moment, letting the quiet vibration center me. Across the aisle, Adam avoided my eyes for the first time all week. He adjusted his monitor, then his chair, then pretended to look for something in a drawer he'd opened 3 times already. Ruth passed by on her way to the printer. She didn't stop, but she offered the smallest nod, a silent acknowledgement that she'd seen what happened, and maybe, just maybe, she wasn't afraid to be seen near me anymore. Minutes later, a door opened. Claire's. Dana walked out first, or rather, she tried to walk out. But it wasn't the same stride she always used, the one full of casual superiority. This time her steps were stiff, her eyes glassy, her face drained of its usual confidence. She didn't look angry. She looked exposed. Claire followed behind her, expression unreadable but firm. She stopped at Dana's desk, spoke quietly, motioned toward a stack of her belongings. Half the floor pretended not to look. The other half didn't bother hiding it. Dana grabbed her things with shaking hands. No jokes this time. No smirks. No comments about sensitivity or team players. Just silence. She didn't look at me as she walked out. She didn't have to. Her silence was the closest thing to an admission I'd ever get. When the door closed behind Dana, it felt like the entire office released a breath it didn't realize it had been holding. The tension didn't vanish. It shifted, stretched, recoiled. People looked around as if expecting someone else to speak first, someone else to restore the illusion of normalcy. But normalcy wasn't coming back. Not today. Not after this. Claire walked to the center of the floor. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The room was already listening. "I'll be reviewing our policies on workplace conduct," she said. "If anyone has concerns, my door is open." It was the blandest way possible to acknowledge what had just happened, but it was also the closest thing to accountability this office had ever seen. Then she turned and walked back to her office, leaving her words hanging in the air like dust. I sat still, letting the moment settle. The hum of my mini fridge felt different now, less like a shield, more like a reminder of every small boundary I had been forced to defend. A chair creaked beside me. It was Adam. He lingered awkwardly, shifting from one foot to the other, eyes glued to the floor. "Hey," he muttered, I didn't know she was actually taking your stuff." I didn't respond. He swallowed. "I shouldn't have made those jokes. They weren't funny." Still, I said nothing. Because in that moment, it wasn't about punishing him. It wasn't even about forgiveness. It was about seeing the sudden collapse of the false confidence he'd worn all week, realizing he was never brave enough to be cruel on his own. He had always needed someone like Dana to lead. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I nodded once. Not acceptance, not rejection, just acknowledgement, the most I could offer. As he walked away, I felt something I hadn't felt since the first meal went missing. Distance. Not isolation, not exclusion. Distance, chosen, deliberate, clean. And it felt strangely like the beginning of something steadier than approval. Self-respect. The rest of the afternoon unfolded in a quiet, uneasy rhythm. The kind that follows a storm but doesn't quite trust the calm. People typed more softly, walked more carefully. Even the copier sounded hesitant, as if it didn't want to disturb whatever shift had just settled over the office. Around 4:10 p.m., Ruth stopped by again. She didn't hover this time. She sat, fully, deliberately, in the chair beside my desk. "I heard what happened after I left," she said gently. "I just wanted you to know I'm glad you spoke up." Her voice didn't carry guilt now. It carried something steadier, something like relief. I studied her expression. It shouldn't have taken this long for the truth to matter. "I know." She twisted her fingers together. "But things stick around here. Patterns. People get scared of stirring things." She paused. "You broke one today. That's not small." I wasn't sure how to respond to that. For weeks, the office had made me feel like I was shrinking, folding into myself just to avoid the next jab, the next mocking line. And now Ruth was sitting here, telling me I'd done something big. She stood after a moment. "If you ever need someone to back you up, I will." The simple honesty in her voice hit harder than any apology. As she walked away, the late afternoon sun drifted through the blinds, cutting warm lines across the carpet, across my hands, across the small fridge at my feet. For the first time all week, the office didn't feel like a cage tightening around me. It felt quieter, lighter, not fixed, but shifting. And underneath all of it, a thought rose, slow, solid, undeniable. Maybe protecting my boundaries didn't isolate me. Maybe it revealed who never deserved to stand beside me in the first place. By the time the clock edged toward 5, the office had thinned out. People gathered their things quietly, avoiding the kind of conversations that normally filled a Friday afternoon. Even the ones who usually lingered by the coffee machine slipped out early, eager to escape the weight that still hung in the air. I packed my bags slowly, not stalling, grounding. The mini fridge hummed beneath the desk, steady as ever. I bent down, unlocked it, and placed my now empty lunch container inside to chill before heading home. A small ritual, a small comfort. Just as I straightened, Claire appeared beside my desk. She didn't speak right away. She just stood there, hands clasped lightly in front of her. The edges of her expression softened in a way they hadn't been all week. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded. We stepped into the hallway, where the fading light spilled from narrow windows, casting long shadows across the carpet. Claire exhaled slowly. "I owe you an apology." I blinked, not expecting that. "I should have taken your concerns more seriously from the beginning," she continued. "I let the office dynamic color my judgment instead of addressing the actual problem. That wasn't fair to you." Her voice didn't wobble. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply honest, an honesty I hadn't heard in days. I nodded once. "Thank you." She hesitated. "For what it's worth, you handled today with more composure than most people would have." A small, tired breath slipped from me. I just wanted to be treated with respect. "You deserved that," she said quietly, "and moving forward, you will be." It wasn't a promise I trusted entirely, but it was a start. As she returned to her office, I stood there for a moment, letting the last slant of daylight fall across my shoulders. The truth was simple. I hadn't wanted conflict, I'd wanted dignity, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had it. Most of the office was empty when I finally gathered my things to leave. The last glow of daylight clung to the windows, turning the floor into a quiet stretch of gold and shadow. I slung my bag over my shoulder and reached down to lock the mini fridge one last time for the week. The familiar click felt different now. Not defensive, not fearful, claiming. On my way out, I passed the break room. For the first time in days, there was no tension pressing against the doorway, no hush that followed me in or out. The tables were wiped clean. The fridge door hung slightly open, humming softly, unbothered. I paused just for a breath. The room that had been the center of so much humiliation now felt strangely hollow, like a stage after the actors had left. As I crossed the lobby, Ruth stepped out from behind the elevator alcove. "Heading out?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. She nodded, a simple gesture, but it carried something steady. "I hope your weekend's peaceful. You earned it." "Thank you," I said. She gave a small smile before turning toward the exit, a quiet, human moment in a week full of noise. Outside, the evening air felt cooler than expected. I stood there for a moment on the sidewalk, listening to the distant hum of traffic, the soft rustle of leaves. The city moved around me, indifferent, steady, alive. I exhaled. All week they had tried to make me feel small, unreasonable, dramatic, inconvenient. But the truth was simpler, quieter, heavier. I had asked for something basic, and when it wasn't given, I protected it myself. That wasn't paranoia. That wasn't selfishness. That was survival. The quiet, dignified kind most people never notice until it costs them something. I took one step forward, then another, letting the day fade behind me. The office would shift without Dana. So would I. Monday arrived quieter than I expected, the kind of quiet that doesn't warn, it waits. I stepped into the office, half expecting the sideways looks, the whispers, the invisible walls I'd gotten used to, but instead, something else greeted me. Neutrality. Not warmth, not hostility, just space. People said their usual half-awkward morning, but the edge was gone. The tension that once clung to the corners of the room had thinned, like fog lifting after a long storm. Even the hum of the communal fridge sounded different, less like a threat, more like background noise. I set my bag down, unlocked my mini fridge, and slid my lunch inside. No one stared, no one muttered, no one made a joke under their breath. It was almost disappointing how quickly they adapted when the ringleader was gone. Around mid-morning, Claire sent a message asking if I could stop by briefly. No dread hit my stomach this time. No anticipation of blame or negotiation. Just a simple request. Her office door was open when I walked in. She gestured to a seat. "I wanted to follow up," she said. "The situation with Dana has been addressed." I nodded. "And I want to assure you," she continued, "that the behavior you dealt with won't be tolerated moving forward. If anything like this happens again, to you or anyone else, I expect to be told immediately." For once, her words didn't feel like damage control. They felt like a correction. Overdue, but real. I stood to leave, and she added softer, "I hope you know, you weren't the problem." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. When I returned to my desk, Ruth glanced over with a small smile. Not pity, not relief. Something quiet, steady, respect. I opened my lunch later that day and ate in peace. Not because people had suddenly changed, but because I finally stopped shrinking to make room for their comfort. By Wednesday, the office found a new rhythm. Quieter, steadier, almost cautious. People weren't walking on eggshells. They were walking with awareness. A subtle difference, but one you can feel in the weight of the air. I noticed it first when I walked into the break room. The usual burst of noise didn't die the second I stepped in. no sudden silence, no shifting glances, just normal conversation that continued without the shadow of mockery trailing behind it. I placed my container in the microwave. As it hummed to life, Mark walked in. He hesitated, the kind of pause someone makes when they're deciding whether to retreat or step forward. He stepped forward. "Hey," he said quietly. "I wanted to say I was wrong." I turned toward him. He looked down, thumb brushing the edge of a coffee mug. "I knew something was off with the whole situation," he continued. "I just didn't want to get involved, and that wasn't fair to you." The honesty was unexpected, soft, but honest. "Thank you," I said. He nodded. If I'd spoken up earlier, maybe things wouldn't have gotten so bad. The microwave beeped. I took my food out, the steam rising between us. "People see things they don't want to acknowledge," I said. "Doesn't make it right." He exhaled. "I'm trying to do better." For the first time, I believed him. As I left the break room, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the small window by the door. I looked the same. Tired eyes, work badge, the faint crease on my shirt from sitting too long. But the person standing there felt different. Not because the office treated me better now, because I wasn't bending myself around their comfort anymore. Respect, I realized, isn't something you wait to be handed. Sometimes you earn it by refusing to disappear. By the end of the week, the office didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. Just a place where people worked, typed, microwave leftovers, and tried to stay out of unnecessary trouble. But some changes lingered beneath the surface, quiet and unmistakable. On Thursday afternoon, I walked into the kitchen to refill my water bottle. The sunlight caught the chrome on the communal fridge, and for the first time, I didn't feel anything tighten in my chest when I looked at it. No anger, no humiliation, just a fridge. Nothing more. As I reached for the faucet, someone stepped beside me. It was Claire. She didn't hover. She didn't shift her weight like she was bracing for a hard conversation. She just leaned against the counter, hands loosely folded. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about how easy it is to ignore small problems until they become big ones." I nodded. She glanced at the fridge, then back at me. I let a small problem grow because I didn't want conflict, and that ended up creating something worse. It wasn't an apology. She'd already given me that. This felt like something else, a recognition of the broader pattern neither of us had named. "I appreciate you saying that," I replied. She gave a small, tired smile. "You handled the whole thing with more grace than most people would have." Grace. Not a word I was used to hearing here. As she left the room, I filled my bottle and let the cold water run over my fingers for a moment. The hum of the microwave, the scrape of a chair in the hall, the low hum of distant conversation, normal sounds, but inside me, something had settled, a steadiness I hadn't felt in weeks. I walked back to my desk, past my mini fridge, and for once didn't hear it as armor. It was just mine, and that alone felt like a small kind of victory. Friday afternoon carried a softness the week hadn't earned, the kind that comes after a long stretch of tension where everyone is finally remembering how to breathe again. I worked through the last of my tasks, the low hum of conversations drifting around the office, lighter now, almost tentative. Around 3:45 p.m., I stood to stretch and noticed a small note slipped beneath the edge of my keyboard. No name, just a folded square of paper. For a moment, my stomach tightened. Instincts built from weeks of quiet hostility. But I unfolded it anyway. In neat handwriting, it read, "Thank you for speaking up. Some of us needed that more than you know. No signature, no clues, just truth." I placed the note inside my drawer, letting its presence settle something in me. Later, on my way to the kitchen, I passed two newer employees chatting by the printer. One of them said, "I guess it's good we're finally talking about stuff here instead of pretending everything's fine." The other nodded. Yeah, people shouldn't have to put up with things just to keep the peace. They didn't notice me passing by. Maybe that was the point. In the break room, I refilled my water bottle, glancing briefly at the communal fridge. Someone had taped a small reminder on it in bold marker. Label your food. Respect others' belongings. Simple. Direct. Necessary. I didn't know who put it there, but it wasn't me. That mattered more than I expected. Back at my desk, I powered down my computer. The office was quieter now, shadows stretching across the carpet as people packed up for the weekend. As I slung my bag over my shoulder, I glanced at the mini fridge one last time. Its gentle hum wasn't a shield anymore, just a reminder of the line I drew and refused to erase. A line that held. Sometimes, restoring your dignity doesn't require noise. Sometimes, all it takes is refusing to move when you're being pushed. I stepped outside into the late afternoon light, the kind that softens the sharp edges of a long week. The air was cool, steady, familiar, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I could actually breathe without bracing for the next small hit. As I walked toward the parking lot, the building's glass door swung open behind me. Footsteps approached, light but purposeful. It was Ruth. She jogged a little to catch up, lunch bag tucked under her arm. "Hey," she said, slightly out of breath. "I didn't want to leave without saying something." I paused. "What's up?" She shifted her bag, her gaze steady in a way it hadn't been before. "I know it probably still feels messy. Offices don't change overnight." A soft exhale. "But just so you know, what you did. People noticed. Not just the confrontation, the way you carried yourself through all of it." I didn't speak, letting her continue. "You didn't lash out. You didn't humiliate anyone. You just told the truth when no one else would." She offered a small, earnest nod. That kind of thing sticks with people. I looked at her, seeing a sincerity that hadn't had space to show itself until now. "Thank you," I said. She smiled. A real one this time. "Have a good weekend. You deserve one." As she walked toward her car, the quiet around me shifted. Not empty, not heavy, just calm. I stood beside my own car for a moment, watching the sun dip behind the office building. The same building that had made me feel cornered, embarrassed, targeted, but not anymore. I opened the car door, setting my bag inside. The last golden streak of light reflected faintly on the window, and in it I saw the same face I'd seen all week, but the expression was different. Not smaller, not dimmed, not apologizing for existing, just steady, centered. Enough. Sometimes the ending isn't explosive. Sometimes it's simply the quiet return of your own voice.